This is Hebrew Hits presented by jtriberadio.com. I'm your host, Malya, and I sit down with people who live by the motto, it's what you do with what you have that makes a difference. Welcome to the 41st episode of Hebrew Hits. I'm your host, Malya, and today I'm so excited to introduce our guest. Before I get there, I'd like to kindly ask you if you can please go follow Hebrew Hits on Instagram and Facebook at Hebrew_Hits. And please leave us a subscription and a like and a follow on YouTube at Hebrew Hits Radio. We are also available on all your favorite streaming apps, so go give us a follow on that as well. Before we get to the show, I'd like to say hello to our sponsor, which is David Miller Studios. He is a professional photographer, and right now he is offering a 25% off of your next photo shoot. This deal is going on until the end of January. It's 2021. Don't you want to look better? Well, go DM David Miller Studios and use code MALYA25 for 25% off your next photo shoot. Well, right now, I am sitting down with the CEO of Quantum Media. Here is Ari Zoldan. Welcome to the show.
Great to be here. Been following you since one of the first episodes, and you've been doing great. So,
what has been your favorite episode?
Oh my God! Well, I'm hoping this is going to be the favorite episode, but we'll see what the audience says.
Well, Ari, I know I've also been following you. Tell me a little bit about your backgrounds, where you grew up.
Sure. So I grew up in the Five Towns till I was about 17 years old, specifically Lawrence. I went to South Shore for elementary school. Then I went to Hafter High School, graduated from there, and then I spent a year in Israel and ultimately ended up at Yeshiva University. So that's pretty much in a nutshell my educational background. When I was 17, I moved to the city and lived in the city for a good 10, 15 years and ultimately got married, and we live up in Muncie right now with three little rascals. So.
Wow, you live in Muncie. So from Five Towns, you went to Muncie. I
did. Well, officially we're in Wesley Hills, but I like to say Muncie just for the shock value of it, you know? Muncie, what are you doing in Muncie, you know? So we're next door.
What are you? What are you doing in Muncie?
We love it there. I feel like I should work for the Chamber of Commerce there, you know?
Yeah.
You're in the country. You're in the country, you know? It's obviously very different from the city. So you have land, a house. So definitely different than living on the Upper West Side. And I think it's great. It's great for raising kids up there. So we're super happy.
Ari, have you always wanted to be an entrepreneur growing up?
No, absolutely not. Didn't even know what an entrepreneur was. Didn't know anything about building companies. It certainly wasn't on my trajectory. Graduated from YU with a major in finance. I certainly thought that I'd be on that finance track, investment banking, yada, yada, yada. And just kind of by accident, I ended up in the world of startups. And it's been quite addictive the past 20 years of spending time in that space and learning how to build a company from scratch. So it's something that, no, I didn't plan on it. It wasn't on my roadmap, but I was open to different opportunities. And because of that, it led me down this path.
Right, for sure. And are your parents entrepreneurs or totally not?
No, I think they are. They very much are. They're go-getters. They're self-starters. So I did see some of that in my house growing up. So maybe that indeed was actually a bit of an influence. I never really thought about it in that capacity, but probably, you know, on some level, I think growing up with it probably did, I guess, either convince me or geared me, or at least I was open to the opportunities of going it alone.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you say you're from the Five Towns, because this podcast is taking place from the Five Towns right now.
Which are the towns, Malya?
Cedarhurst.
Very, very nice. Good. So you're from Strong Island also.
It's such a small world. It's such a small world. So Ari, I want to ask you this question, because this is the entire point of the show. The entire point of Hebrew Hits is it's what you do with what you have that makes a difference. Every single person in this world is given challenges. You could choose to fail. You could choose to succeed. So how would you say this mantra applies to your life?
Well, I think if you're, you know, quote unquote, you know, an entrepreneur or somebody that's in the self-starting space, it's very much a personal journey. we always hear, oh, it's only business, it's not personal. And I was thinking, if I stole your money, Malya, it's
Oh
very
no.
personal, right? It's not,
Right.
I can't come back and say, oh, it's just business, don't worry about it. So I definitely think the journey of being an entrepreneur is definitely one that is very challenging, comes with a lot of hardships,
Mhm.
but from that comes a lot of growth and growth learning. And I think, it's, although the road the past 20 years has been exciting, has been interesting, but I think from a growth perspective, it's
Mhm.
definitely helped me build who I am and some of the things and some of the projects that I'm working on today. And I do believe that. I think that people that are entrepreneurs, they gotta, it's not easy. You always hear,
Right.
the grass is always green on the other side. Oh, cool, starting a company. Well, guess what? 80% of companies fail after the first year.
Right.
75% out of those 80s, out of that 80 fails after that. So if you're super, super lucky, you'll make it to the third year. But people don't really tell you that. You go into your event, you go into project, go into your own startup, and just to know statistically that
Mhm.
odds are stacked against you. So
Wow.
how do you get up every day? How do you know that, okay, how do you stay optimistic in an environment like that? So I think that's really, really challenging for a lot of guys that, a lot of men and women that are in the startup space. So I give them a lot of credit. And I think from there becomes your personal journey, right? It's,
Right.
how do you deal with disappointment? How do you deal with emotional stress, financial stress, psychological stress? It's
Mhm.
roadblock after roadblock after roadblock. So after a period of time, you kind of understand and learn how to deal with certain stressors. And I think just different things, different avenues open up because of that on the personal side.
So I want to ask you, you were going to college for finance, you went to YU. How did this all happen? Like, how did your journey take place as becoming an entrepreneur after you graduated college?
Sure. So I think I just checked off, finance because it came after accounting, maybe accounting business. I remember I was at the registrar, I was like, I don't know. I was 19 years old.
Uh-huh.
All right, finance. It was the top of the list. So I checked it off. Had some internships throughout my senior throughout my year at college, throughout my years at college, and it was a great experience. I was able to support myself throughout college by working at an investment bank. But when it was time for a full-time gig, I think I may have been fired after the fourth day.
Wow.
I think I asked the guy if I could stay to the end of the week, and he was nice enough. He said, "Sure, you stay to the end of the week." But it wasn't for me, and the reason why, like they saw that I didn't have the attention span, and I wasn't focused, and I wasn't into it. And
Mhm.
on my week out, my first and only week in corporate America, I remember turning to my boss and said, what was it that didn't make it, work? I said, I wasn't into it, and that opened up opportunities, and that opened up a pathway for me to be able to do other things. And
Right.
a big believer in Bashert and things happen for a reason. It was right after the internet boom in the 90s in 2001, where everything kind of just blew up in a bad way. And I saw that there were opportunities to go in and to start building company when labor was relatively inexpensive and
Mhm.
opportunity was in abundance. And if you're going to build a company, I've always said, the best time to build it is in a down economy. you know that's when you have the ramp up time to be able to build something great, so you actually catch the wave on the way up. So
Interesting.
I was always passionate about technology, got involved in telecom, voice over IP, before voice over IP was, a household name, and started building different kind of telecom and wireless companies. That led to e-commerce, and then eventually led to a marketing firm, which I run today. And I guess the common denominator, not necessarily what I've learned the most, but um, understand, there's a lot of great entrepreneurs out there, and hopefully there's entrepreneurs that are watching this, and there's a lot of great products and services that people are building. There's all these great ideas. But if you don't know how to market yourself, if you don't know how to market your product, if you don't know how to market your service, if you don't know how to get the word out there about your company, it's
Mhm.
it's nothing,
Right.
if there are no goals, dreams are, it's all great and it's all wonderful, but if there's no goals and there's no way for you to be able to get that kind of exposure and get yourself off the shelf,
Mhm.
people spend, years and years and years going around themselves. So, and there's a lot of great entrepreneurs out there that have great ideas, that have great products, have great services, but they think once they build it, like things will happen. It doesn't
Mhm.
happen. Once you build it, that's when you got to start really, really doubling down and figuring out how
Right.
to market your product. And I've learned that. That was a common denominator. I learned that throughout the years. A lot of the startups that I worked on weren't getting off the ground because people weren't seeing it. I didn't have an audience. There was nothing. There were no channels that I had. And then I fell into media and television, and I got, I understood very, very quickly the power of different media channels, and that, in conjunction with
Mhm.
startups, helped things really move forward. So.
Wow, that's really incredible how you were fired like at such a young age. You come out of college, you're confident, you feel like, okay, this is the job I'm going to have. And then you get fired after a few days. Would you say that was a very low point in your life? Or would you say that helped you? Like, where were you at that point in your life? Like, how did you say, okay, I'm going to move on from this after getting fired so quickly, so fresh out of college?
Right. Was it a low point? It was a low point. It wasn't the lowest point of my life. I think entrepreneurs and people dealing with kind of disappointment are always dealing with the ups and downs and the volatility of it. But certainly it was definitely disappointing.
Mhm.
I knew early on, I was like, look, if it's going to happen, better it happen now than, in 10, 15 years when I've spent a decade or so in corporate America. Uh,
Mhm.
and I get fired then. It was just
Right.
it was just a matter of time. So if it was one week, I did my
I
week, and then I went ahead and I went down the road of entrepreneurship and starting to build companies. And so I'm great. I'm kind of like, I'm thankful that happened.
yeah.
And,
Interesting.
that's how you have to look at things, right? When they happen, even if you don't see them initially, there's probably a rhyme or reason why things are happening in that way, even though it's very hard for us to see it right now.
Yeah.
And so,
I'm curious to know if that original boss ever came back to you now that you're successful, you're on television, has he ever come back to you and be like, wow, like I wish you would have stayed?
no, no, I haven't seen him, but it would be an interesting conversation to have with him. But I probably would thank him, if anything,
Yeah.
for firing me. Right? I mean, he kind of did me a favor. He knew that I wasn't into it. It wasn't me. He could have just kept me there, and I could have been trudging around. But
Hmm.
no, he saw, like, right away. All right, his heart is not into it. He's not passionate about it. Like,
Wow.
let's call it a day. And obviously, I was very upset initially, but again,
Hmm.
looking back, it was a blessing in disguise. So if I do run into him, actually, I'm going to say thank you. So.
Nice. It's so interesting that he couldn't pick up on that in the job interview.
Right.
That,
No. Well, I mean, on job interviews, you're always putting your best foot forward. You have your nice
right.
suit on. You're making sure that all your words are calculated. Your resume is perfect. So you don't know somebody from interview. You don't really know them until they're actually in the job, and you kind of get a sense. And I've learned, actually, over the years, while I've interviewed probably hundreds, if not thousands, of students,
Hmm.
or college grads into the workforce. You kind of get to know people really well. And there's some tricks of the trade that I've kind of developed, and I wrote about, and I've spoken about how to find great talent. And obviously, the most important is how to retain the great talent too. And
Hmm.
that's the core of everything, is human capital today, right? Like, how do I
Right.
find that diamond in a rough? And
Hmm.
kind of, quote unquote, raise them, mold them, teach them, guide them, mentor them, but then keep them happy throughout the years so they produce at a level that is just spectacular.
It's so hard because right now there are so many talented people out there, so many talented people, and everybody's, competing with each other, even competing with themselves, really. That's really what it is, just to get better and better and better. So it's hard to find that like diamond who's like, just more talent, not even more talented, but I guess has more passion and more drive. You know what I'm saying?
Right, right. You could pick, I think, after many years, after years of like knowing people and sensing people, you kind of like could pick it up. And it's not, I don't care about the resume. I mean, the references are nice and they're great,
Mhm.
but I just need a sense of whether or not, you're in it, if you're passionate about it.
Right.
You're able to follow up, and some details, kind of is a really good indication. I'll kind of give you a secret over here. It's not going to be a secret
Okay.
anymore because everyone's going to hear it. So my first interview, and people think I'm totally nuts, is that my first interview lasts about 5 minutes. They'll come
Wow.
in, yeah, max. I mean, 5 minutes, is 4 minutes over than I usually give them. So let's say it's 5 minutes. And then I give them one assignment. I say, do me a favor. I say, follow up with me by 9 p.m. 95% of the people just don't follow up with me, and all they had to do was one very, very simple assignment. They just had to send me an email before 9 p.m. Nice meeting you, look forward to seeing you again. 95% of people don't even do that, So then I'm in touch with them, a week or two later, and they're like, well, why wasn't I hired? I thought I interviewed well. My resume is blah, blah, blah. I said, if we're going to be working together, I need to rely on you. I need you to be dependable. I said, I gave you like the most simplest thing to do,
Yeah.
And if you can't follow up with me by 9 p.m., send me a 4-second email. There's a good chance that, things aren't going to work out. So stuff like that from an
Mhm.
HR interviewing perspective, I've learned to kind of nail down pretty well. It doesn't work all the time, and I've been wrong lots. But for the most part, that's one indication, one task that I'll give somebody that interviews. And first impressions, fortunately or unfortunately, say a lot. How you
Mhm.
come in, how you dress, how you present yourself. It shows whether or not you care or not. So it's kind
Yeah.
of these little small things that add up to something really big that makes an impression. And
Mhm.
I find most people just don't care. You know,
I
they're
see that as well. I see that as well with interviews. You could see who cares to be interviewed and who doesn't. It's,
right,
So I see that the exact same thing, which is very cool because like you're interviewing people for a job, I'm interviewing people about their life, and you see the same thing.
right, right, exactly. And that's I talk about on the lecture circuit a lot about human capital today, right?
Hmm.
Like how do you find superstars? Because you build a team, you build a rock star team, they're going to make you a lot of money. Forget kind of like the product, the service, all that stuff. I'm sure is great, and there's a need for it in the market. But if you
Hmm.
don't have that team, that solid team behind you, not even behind you, walking with you,
Right.
uh, it's you, and you become a babysitter watching new hires just kind of trip over themselves. So it's
Yes.
finding those diamond in a rough, and it's also retaining them and keeping them happy. So
I love that you said about the team because in any business, like Google did not become Google by just one person. He had to scale. And also Apple, all these big, huge companies, they only became big once they had a team with them. And that's really when they scaled their business. I want to ask you this. I know that I'll go back to when you first came out of college and when you got fired and all that, and when you were trying to, grow and become bigger in your business and actually figure out what your path would be. Have you ever experienced self-doubt? Like you're like, I don't know, like I don't really know if I believe in myself. And if you have, how have you overcome that?
Malya, every single day.
Really?
Come on, of course. I think, when you wake up in the morning, you're working on this client, this project, this opportunity, and you're just up against obstacles. It's just
Hmm.
like, I think that's the life of an entrepreneur. It's, how are you going to overcome that hurdle? Because there's always hurdles. Again, you always hear about, the bright side of it. Oh, started in his garage and became a billionaire. Well, they
Right.
don't tell you about the 99.9% of everyone else that's worked on a startup and spent years of their life and spent money on it, and it never took off. So do I have self-doubt? 1,000%. I have self-doubt all the time, but I also don't have the luxury to be able to stay in that self-doubt space,
That's
right?
great.
We have family, right? We have families, we have tuition, we have overhead, we have right? We have family, we have car leases, we have mortgage payments, right? So I, I'm in that space. I fall into that space often, but
Hmm.
I don't necessarily have the leisure or the luxury to be able to just hang out in that self-doubt space. And I
Right.
think that out of that, you're able to build, or you build as a byproduct, you build character from that. But self doubt is important. You want to have self doubt, because if you don't have self doubt, you're you're overconfident, and who wants to deal with egotistical, overconfident people?
That's true.
You want self-doubt.
Right. Can you share a story where you actually were like, you had a lot of self-doubt and you were like, okay, I want to give up. I don't want to get out of bed. I don't want to do anything. I'm just going to give up. But then you said, no, 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 I'm not going to give up. And you pushed forward and then you continue to do amazing things.
Sure. So I was working on a project on a new startup,
Hmm.
and we were like 3 years into it. It was about, without getting into the specifics, it was about to launch. 36 months involved in this project, and then the day before we were quote unquote supposed to go, live, certain things happen, and it just never took off. So you
Right.
kind of like, you stay in bed for the day, and you're like, it's like not having coffee for a week. You're just in this mood. But then again, it comes to a point where, hey, you have bills to pay, right? And you have
Wow.
a mortgage payment, and you have family. So it's coming back to that luxury. If I had $1 trillion in the bank, then I could kind of hang out in self doubt all I want. But the
Hmm.
reality is, very few people have that, so they're kind of forced to be able to move forward. And that's why it's so much of a, getting back to what I said initially, it's so much of a personal journey. It,
Hmm.
I believe entrepreneurship really has very little to do with business, and it's more about self
Interesting.
growth. How do you deal with stress? How do you deal with not paying your bills? How do you deal with emotional stress, family, right? I mean,
Mhm.
as we get older, we have these responsibilities. Well, you're taking all that stuff, and you're risking it all. You're risking all these things that you have because of your idea, your concept. Well, what happens if it doesn't work? You know,
Right.
so yes, self-doubt is important to have. It's important to look at. It's important to understand,
Hmm.
but not to have the luxury of staying in that sphere.
So you worked on this project for 36 months. That's time, energy. Did you lose a lot of money? Like you put a lot down, or was it a lot of your time? Like
For me,
what was you feeling?
yeah. So you speak to most entrepreneurs. Time is money, right? It's opportunity, right? So it was me about the time and the effort that I put
Mhm.
into something um, that didn't
Right.
take off the way I wanted it to. Um, it was the time. Entrepreneurs, that's all we have is time, right? We have realistically 8 hours a day, 40 hours a week. How do we turn our time into dollars? So you spend 3 years working on something that doesn't take off. It hurts. It hurts financially, psychologically, emotionally. So that's very, very challenging. But again, how do when is the time to kind of, okay, I'm done with it. We have to move forward,
Right.
um, and the goal is to try to take that space between, the idea and the failure, and the disappointment rather, and then try to keep that timeline as thin as possible. So it's okay to be angry, to be upset, to be disappointed. um, be in that space. I think it's important. I think it's necessary, but then pick up and move forward, because every minute, every day that you're not in a proactive, positive space, it's working against you.
How long ago was that?
That was about 10 years ago.
Oh, a long time ago.
A long time ago. Now, I've worked on a lot of stuff that hasn't taken off. Haven't worked on something, for 3 years that haven't taken off, but
Right.
nevertheless, yeah, I've worked on tons of stuff that just, didn't have, it either didn't have the legs for it, the timing was off, the partners, it could have been a combination of a bunch of things, but at a certain
Yeah.
point, I also feel and believe that if I put my 100% in it, my
Hmm.
1000% into it, and it doesn't work the way I want it to work, or it doesn't unfold the way it should, I kind of leave that up to God, and I could sleep well at night knowing that, okay, look, I did everything I possibly could,
Right.
there were these variables that I just didn't know about, or wasn't aware, or that was unpredictable. Those are actually those situations. I don't get disappointed. Don't get too disappointed. I get disappointed, but not too disappointed, because you've given everything. You've
Right.
given 100%. If I gave 90%, 95, I don't really care. Blah blah. Blah, that's something else. But
Hmm.
when you give your 1000% to it, and your heart is into it, that night when things don't work out, I mean, many times people couldn't
Right.
sleep because you gave it everything, you know.
Right.
So I'm a big believer in that.
Talking about God and talking about Hashem, I know that you're out there in, in what you do in your business. Has there been any spiritual challenges you have faced?
Sure. I'm always conflicted about wearing a yarmulke on TV.
Okay.
And I'm still conflicted with it. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. It's not really consistent. Which is talk about self-doubt or insecurity. That's my insecurity, or that's where I have some self-doubt. Because if I'm proud of who I am, if I'm proud of the religion that I'm associated with, like, why not wear a yarmulke on TV? You know.
Right.
So those are definitely some personal challenges that I deal with. Totally comes from an insecurity, because there's no reason in the world, if I'm proud to be
Right.
Jewish and I follow the law, why don't I put on a yarmulke? So that's something that is a constant struggle for me. I know it shouldn't be, and I'm hoping to overcome that soon.
You're wearing a yarmulke on this show, right?
Of course I'm wearing. Are you kidding? It's the first thing I did. It wasn't even a question. I was like, oh my god, I wear my yarmulke. I'm gonna be like, what? The YU community is gonna see this.
So I mean, people know you're Jewish. Like, it's not a secret. People that you work with know you're Jewish. So even though you're Jewish, you're still uncomfortable wearing a yarmulke on TV.
I am, and that's my own. Maybe that's the pressure to fit in,
Hmm.
to not stand out. It's a total 100%. Like, I own that. It's an insecurity on my
Right.
side. I embrace it. I know it. For whatever reason, there's some block there, and I want to overcome it. It's something that
Hmm.
I am working on. I'm also working on Kavana. There's certain stuff that I didn't have growing up for whatever reason. I didn't really have so much of a connection, not a physical connection to Judaism, but not at all spiritual. I just wasn't able
Hmm.
to connect. I wasn't able to have Kavana when I davened, and that's changed over the years because I kind of experienced certain things that a higher power or God could have been the only thing that actually made certain things happen. So I needed to kind of see it for myself, or to experience it
Right.
myself, in order to recognize that there's a higher power, God, whatever you want to call it. So I'm kind of starting that journey now.
Cool.
Yeah. I can't say I've been on it. It's just been recent, where when I daven in the morning, I'm trying to have a little bit of kavana. Starts with a little bit of kavana. So um, I'm not moving the needle considerably, but slight a slight hairbrush.
All you need is that little bit.
It's true. It's true. So I'm trying. When I daven every morning, I try to have a
Yeah.
little more kavana, but it's hard. It's hard today. It's like, especially someone that has an attention span of a fruit fly.
Oh, yeah.
How, like, a half hour, 45 minutes, right, to like concentrate and stuff. So something definitely that I'm working on, and I feel good about that, because I'm
Hmm.
definitely heading in the right direction.
No, that's good. Would you ever wear a baseball cap to, when you're on TV on Fox or CNN, or is it not really the type of thing that you would do?
Yeah, you don't really typically, you wouldn't wear like a hat on TV.
Right.
But you know, I should be wearing like, there's no reason why I shouldn't be wearing yarmulke. It's like a huge Kiddush Hashem. I mean, as long as the stuff that comes out of my mouth is half normal, um, it it should be a Kiddush Hashem, and not the other way around.
We
So
all know that Jewish guy. I'm not going to say names on a show. I mean, I probably could, but I'm just not. Who wears the yarmulke? He's on TV. He has his own show, and he's there. He's wearing his black yarmulke.
I've yes, I'm happy to say his name. If you don't want to say his name, I think we all know who he is. And huge Kiddush Hashem. Bottom line,
Yeah.
huge Kiddush Hashem, and I think, like, the community is just like really, really happy with him, and certainly very proud, and he represents just he just does great stuff. So I mean, I have amazing things to say about him. So
Have you ever done any interviews with him or spoken with him?
when I worked in DC, we crossed paths. So we were kind of we were in a similar, in the news space,
Hmm.
the talk radio space. We were in the same circles. So We weren't close at all, but we definitely, on a professional level, we crossed paths, and just admire his work. I think he's amazing.
Yeah.
He's brilliant. He's smart. Um, yeah, only have the nicest things to say about him. And again, he's a real Kiddush Hashem, which is so important.
So I know that you're on a lot of news networks. You're on Fox, CNN, CNBC, talking about, being on the news and things like that. Which one is your favorite news network to be on?
That's a good question. You know what? Actually, radio is something that I really, really enjoy. And I'm not just saying radio podcast, because we're together, but there's something still, I think, very genuine about
Mhm.
radio. People think, radio is dead. Radio is not dead,
No.
you could still target locally by zip code, from a business perspective, radio is certainly not dead. I don't think radio will ever go away. I think it will always be a medium. It will always be an outlet for media. It may not be that big, but there's definitely a space for it. So I love the environment of radio. I find that it's more personal.
Mhm.
Radio podcast, right? It's the same thing. I feel that there's a different kind of platform that it affords you to be, for whatever reason, I think more authentic and more raw. And I think that's just the nature. That's just the nature of the platform. You also typically will have more time on radio, not all the time, but
Mhm.
you have 2-3 minutes on television, and then But when you get an interview on radio, I feel like it's especially if they're an engaged listener,
Mhm.
they're able to process and take the information in, versus just watching it on television. So.
Right. And also when you're on radio, it's about you. It's about you, your story, who you are, what you do. When you're getting interviewed on TV, it's focusing, you give business advice, right? You're
Many times, yeah. So I cover business and technology, as an expert guest for a lot of the news networks. So right, I get to comment on the ongoings on mergers or opportunities in the marketplace,
Mhm.
or breaking news. But yeah, TV, just if you have that relationship, on radio or podcast, you have that relationship with the host.
Mhm.
There's I feel like there's a different kind of connection. There's a special connection because maybe you have more time.
Right.
So I just think it's different. It's different. It's unique, and I really do love radio, and I love podcasting. I think the podcast industry is going to just continue to grow. So I'm excited to watch that space.
I got to ask you this question. I'm so excited to ask you this. Are you ever nervous to get on TV? You look all calm, collected, you don't look nervous at all, but inside, are you nervous?
Um, I think everyone is a little nervous, when you're going out in front of 40 million people. I think, I think there's always hesitation. We talked about self-doubt before. There's always self-doubt. Am I prepared? Am I talking points in order? How am I going to present myself? Am I going to get my points in? What happens if the host asks me a question I don't know? So yeah, you live in that space, a bit. So you're always a little nervous, and I think it's important. You need to be a little bit nervous.
Yeah.
If you're not nervous at all, I think that's not a good thing, and it could be an indication of something else, because you don't want to come off also overconfident, right? You
Right.
want to come off, vulnerable. You don't know we don't know everything. So yeah,
Mhm.
am I scared? Yeah, I get a little scared every single time I go on, but practice makes perfect. The more you do it, it kind of becomes more natural.
Mhm.
And the more you prepare for the segment too, that kind of helps you. But I do get a little nervous before each one, and I hope I always continue to be a little nervous because it keeps me on my toes.
So before we talk about quantum media, I have to ask you this other question. Before we started this interview, were you nervous?
That's a good question. I wasn't nervous because I know you, and
Right.
so we've worked together in the past, so I know you, and you make your guests feel very comfortable.
Thank
That
you.
was number one. Number two was we did some planning beforehand, and that's kind of everything. So I had a chance to review my notes and see what what the format of the podcast was going to be.
Mhm.
So I wasn't nervous, but you still watch every word you say and you double check it and all that stuff. So, but
Are you
it's
nervous right now, though?
no, I'm not nervous now, but it's only because you make the environment calm, and that's what it's about with host and media and television. Like, it's a relationship between the host and the guests.
Mm-hmm.
Like, are you listening? Are you taking it in? Are you making eye contact? Are you making the guests feel comfortable? So that's really important, and you've accomplished that. So kudos.
Yay, thank you. I'm so happy that you're not nervous. That's awesome. So I know that you are the CEO of Quantum Media. So explain to our listeners what exactly Quantum Media is.
Sure. So we're a marketing firm. We act as chief marketing officers for a whole bunch of different companies. Part of our firm is traditional media, TV, print, and radio. The other is digital. And I didn't go, I majored in finance, never went into marketing, but kind of learned from my own experience of having startups, what it takes to kind of market yourself or market your product or market your service. So
Mm-hmm.
over the years, people have come to me and said, oh, I need help with branding. I need help, launching my company. I need help. So that kind of things kind of naturally evolved in a way where we started an agency and we started taking on clients. So we don't advertise. Thank God it's all been word of mouth.
Mm-hmm.
And we're at a point right now where it's great in a company's, you get to kind of I don't want to say pick and choose your clients, but you get to be a little more selective about
Mm-hmm.
the type of clients that you take on, the ones you feel,
Right.
the ones that you feel passionate about. Like those are the ones you want to work with. The other ones, even if they're paying you, more money, but they're toxic and they suck the life out of you, don't want to go there. And I talk about on the lecture circuit a lot about toxic relationships, toxic business relationships,
Mm-hmm.
and what that looks like, and always surrounding yourself with like people that have good energy.
It's so awesome that you're able to choose who you want to take on as a client. That's such an advantage that you have. It's amazing.
At this point, we didn't in the beginning, we were taking everything and anything. If it walked, didn't walk, whatever, we would just, the dog walked into the office, we would take it on, But
Yeah.
after a while, you kind of prove your worth. You could demand certain fees, and
Mm-hmm.
you can also, be selective as to what clients, what sectors you want to work in.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's always quality. No matter what, these days, it's always quality over quantity. So better
Right.
to have like, a dozen incredible clients than have, 100 clients that you're just, not working their accounts. So um,
Right. So what do you do? Do you like run their social medias? You push their product? Is that what you do?
yeah, so we'll run their digital campaigns. We'll
Mm-hmm.
get them on television. We'll get them quoted in magazines and newspapers. We'll get them on podcasts. We'll get them on the radio. I mean, we'll get them exposure. Bottom line. So
Right.
anything that a chief marketing officer would do, we have all that.
That's awesome. Okay, so I guess I'm going to be speaking to you after we finish this episode.
You're doing a good job. You're doing a great job.
Yeah, awesome.
Don't worry.
Okay, so throughout your whole career, what would you say has been your favorite time in your career from when you finished college till now?
My favorite time. Probably when I was first coming out of being down and out, I think kind of where you see the light at the end of the tunnel,
Mm-hmm.
where you go through a lot of like the hardships, but yet there's that, wait, there's actually that light there where, we may be able to make it on the other side. So I think it's that moment where you work so hard, where you're dealing with failure, you're dealing with obstacles, but then you see, not necessarily right in front of you, but you see a mile down the road that wait, that there's a light there, and I just have to get to that light. I find
Awesome.
that to be very, very satisfying.
I know Quantum, you do a lot of marketing and things like that for different companies, getting businesses out. Have you ever worked with companies that are not part of the USA or across the ocean?
Yeah, so a nice size of our portfolio of clients are overseas companies in Africa and Asia and South America,
Mm-hmm.
in the Middle East, and those are definitely. I do enjoy traveling, so I kind of mix traveling with business. So you get to see parts of the world that ordinarily I wouldn't be able to see or
Right.
experience. But I love working on cross-border transactions, sitting on boards of other companies also outside the United States. So I find that to be challenging, interesting. You learn about different cultures,
Mm-hmm.
different environments, different way people conduct business. I find that to be interesting, a lot. That's something that I
Are
really.
these companies that are overseas trying to, get publicity in America? Is that why they reach out to you?
Yeah, so there's a lot of companies the international companies that are looking for exposure through
Hmm.
U.S. media, through the U.S. media
Okay.
channel. So they'll engage us to be able to, they have a great product, they have a service, they have a campaign, whatever it is, and they want to be able to, launch a digital campaign in the U.S. How do you do
Mhm.
it? So we'll go ahead and we'll do that for them. So I find that to be interesting. Many times I
Yeah.
have to go, there overseas to be able to pitch the client. Uh,
Hmm.
but ultimately, if we do, and the sector is good, and we like it works out a lot. I really enjoy doing that. So
That's so great. And speaking about overseas, I have to congratulate you for becoming a board member on a bank for a bank in Dubai.
uh,
Congratulations on that.
thank you. An investment bank in Dubai. We're going to be doing marketing and facilitating cross-border transactions for companies that are looking to break into the United Arab Emirates. And there's been so much of that in the news, with
Hmm.
Israel now, now having diplomatic relations with Dubai, and now Bahrain and Morocco was just sealed. So it's a good opportunity. It's a good opportunity for Israelis to be able to get into that space, which I know they have their eyes on. So we help on the business development side to be able to facilitate those relationships.
Yes, and Dubai right now is the hotspot. So how is it for you to travel there? Is it exciting? There's like Jewish like things that are starting to pop up right now in Dubai.
There is. So I used to go to the Shul. There was a Shul there.
Hmm.
It's pretty fascinating. It's they don't advertise it. I mean, before they made the announcement, between Israel and Dubai, the diplomatic relations, they the Shul was very much underground.
Wow.
They never disclosed the location. In fact, when I was traveling there before Shabbat, I sent a text when I was leaving from the U.S. to go there. I sent a text to somebody that knew somebody that knew somebody that had the location of the shul.
Okay. Wow.
So I said, okay, can I have the location? They said, no, no, we're only going to give you the location when you actually land in Dubai, like right before shop. Like they were very, very sensitive as to location
Wow.
of the shul.
Why?
Yeah, I guess for I don't know, it could be anti-Semitic reasons, but they don't want it. They don't want the address of the shul out there, so they're very, very cautious who they gave, or who they give the
Interesting.
address to. Yeah. So yeah, right, literally right before Shabbos, he said, okay, here's the address, and you'll come. But it was amazing. Kind of situations like that, I find, especially being a Jew and a religious Jew
Uh-huh.
overseas, trying to always find a shul, whether you're in India, whether you're in Africa. Um, I find that to be, I find it to be fun and exciting. Also, you feel typically when you're away from your religion, or you're less connected physically,
Hmm.
you kind of want to always be, or always have the tendency to be spiritually, or wanting to be spiritually more connected. Um,
Right. Did they make you sign a paper saying that you're not going to tell anybody the location of the shul?
No, 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 they didn't. But they were very. It's like understood. Like here's the address. Like don't give it out to anyone. Now
Yeah.
it's all public. They, because of the agreements, everything now is open. But before that, it was definitely very, it was very, very quiet and under the radar. So
So Ari, I have to ask you, how is it to be on the board of an investment bank in Dubai?
it's cool. We're going to be hopefully bringing in a lot of Israeli companies. Uh,
Wow.
yeah, we're super excited about that. I mean, Israel, as you know, is a startup nation. They haven't been able to work with any companies in the UAE ever.
Hmm.
So this is kind of a
Right.
new market for them, and Israel's got the goods. They've got the technology.
So how are those corporate relationships between Dubai and Israel?
You know what? Fascinating on many, many levels, right? This is kind of the first time that two worlds are coming together.
Yeah.
um, but we also, there are so many differences, but there are also, I think, there are more things that we have in common between both the countries. Culturally, if you think about it culturally, it's a similar culture. If you
Hmm.
really think about things, even like tznius, or modesty, very simply, right? I mean, you know it's the same thing. There's no difference, right? If somebody is dressed in a long skirt and covering themselves, the same thing over there if they're wearing, a burqa and front, right? I mean, so the laws of
Yeah.
there's there's halal, there's all these different things that I think we have a lot more in common. Look, ultimately, we come from the same place, right?
Right.
So we have a lot more in common than we do have differences.
And they get along between
Yeah,
Dubai and
yeah,
Israel?
amazing. It makes for like great. I'm very out there and outspoken also about being Jewish and being religious and stuff. So I love kind of like throwing that out there as the first sentence, sitting at a table with I think it's great.
So you're not nervous to like walk through the streets being a Jew wearing a yarmulke if you are in
No,
Dubai?
no, zero. As crazy as that sounds, I think at the end of the day, people are people. You have good people, you have bad
Hmm.
people.
True.
The bad people are going to do bad things. The good people are going to do good things. It doesn't matter geographically where you are around the world. And if there's an opportunity to make a kiddush Hashem, then awesome.
Right. And now, how do you see the corporate relationships between Dubai and the US? Is it different than between Dubai and Israel?
It's been developing. They've been working together for some time. I think
Hmm.
though there's going to be a lot more investment now,
Hmm.
because that region of the world is a little bit calmer right now, and I think that everybody will be working closer together. So I think that obviously the world is becoming a lot smaller too.
Yeah.
So working on transactions, whether you're sitting in Israel, whether you're here or whether you're over there, becomes a lot more accessible. So I think things are going to be really opening up considerably, and there's new investment opportunities in
Right.
Dubai also, especially in the tourism business, where Israelis are just they're gonna flock to Dubai to experience. Right, Israelis are travelers anyway, so
Yeah.
they haven't been able to experience that part of the world. So that's
Right.
exciting.
And left and right, I'm constantly hearing people are going to Dubai for this, for that. There's weddings happening in Dubai, like Jewish weddings, because I guess it's closed here because of Corona. But in Dubai, they're like flying there. What is the situation right now in Dubai with COVID?
They have it. I mean, for the most part, they do have it under. I don't want to say under control. I mean, I think
Hmm.
everyone is being hit by it, but it's a small country, so I think that they're able to maybe manage it better than a country of 330 million people like in the U.S. So I think the rules are a little bit stricter, and that's why I think they're able to keep it a bit under control. But people are still, unfortunately, they're dying, and they're subject to everything that everyone
Right.
else is subject to here.
Right.
um, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunities now with this bridge opening up, uh,
Hmm.
both for Israeli companies and U.S. companies as well, to be able to start it, and hopefully that will lend itself to a calmer political environment also, right?
Yes, hopefully.
Yeah, you want everyone to be successful, right?
Hmm.
So when everyone's successful and making money, there's no war. There's no war. So
I always wonder why people push people down, and I realize it's probably because of jealousy, or they wish they were successful. But like I wish everybody success. Like I want everybody to be successful. Why not? Like if one person could be successful, why can't somebody else? Why
so
push people down?
where does that come from, Malya? It comes from, it's one word. It's insecurity,
I hear, yeah.
right? It's insecurity. Why don't I? I want you to be successful. Well, I'm confident. I want go. I want you to be successful. But if I wasn't confident in myself, or I was feeling insecure, I would want you part of my tribe then on the way down. So I think a lot of it stems from insecurity. Like I want you to be the most successful person in the world.
Yeah.
I think you will be,
Oh, I
notwithstanding
mean, thank you.
what I'm saying. But I think I think good people want good things to happen.
Yeah. Not only with success, but I also find that if you're out on the street and you meet somebody, let's say, and like let's say even give a compliment, people have a very hard time giving compliments. And I asked somebody, I'm like, why can't you give a compliment? Like, why is it so hard? But somebody said, because I feel if I give you a compliment, then you either look better than me or you're doing a better job than me. And I was like, no, that's not how it is. You want everybody to be happy. There's so much right now, there's so many challenges in the world right now. In this time, 2020 has been a crazy year. Giving somebody a compliment could lift them up tremendously, but people are so afraid that if they give someone a compliment, even not even talking about being successful, just a small compliment, it's hard for people to do.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I mean, the greatest thing in the world, I always say, is to do somebody the smallest act of kindness.
Mhm.
The other day I was going through it, just to give you an example, which this wasn't planned. Didn't plan to talk about this on air, but I was just going over the toll bridge, and the lady in the toll booth, you could tell she was having a hard day. She just didn't look happy. But yet her nails, she did her nails all like glitzed up, and she took a lot of pride in her nails. So when she handed me back the money, I just said, "Hey, I really like your nails," and just that very, very simple act, no sweat off my back,
Right.
really she was beaming, and I feel like it made her day. So yeah, so
It for sure did.
yeah,
For sure did.
we could all do that. It was very simple. I said 3 words, nice nails, really cool. And then I took my change and I kept going. But it's those acts of kindness that I think are the greatest things in the world, that people don't stop for a minute. Even just saying thank you, you look nice, or I appreciate your help. No sweat off your back.
Exactly.
It's the same time and effort, as anything else, and you make somebody feel good, and then that's infectious, right? Then you're spreading positive energy.
Exactly.
And I think that's important, because whatever you put out there in the world, like, comes back to you, and even if it doesn't come back to you, you should still do good, because there's no harm in that. So
Yeah, I mean, people believe in karma. Is karma for good too, or just for bad? I'm curious.
that's a good question. I think it could go both ways. You have good karma,
Yeah.
bad karma. I think so. We could go with that line. I don't know, but let's go with it. It could go both.
Awesome. So Ari, I want to ask you, what are you doing next? What's next for you? What are you working on now?
So I'm finishing up a book that hopefully will be published very soon.
Wow.
Yeah, which I'm excited about. It's called Startup. Coincidentally, it's called Startup Karma. You mentioned the word.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's called Startup Karma. And basically, the past 20 years, just things that kind of came. Well, you'll have to read the book. I can't tell you everything, but
You're going to send me the book? You'll send me the book?
Yeah. Basically, Startup Karma, I'm not going to give it away right now, but something that I've been working on for many years. And it talks about a very holistic approach to business. We think greed is good, but we see over the past, 1,000 years, every time, even if we look at the last 100 years, we see the Great Depression. It led up to, the housing crash. There were so many things that, so many bad things that happened because of greed. So, the Gordon Gekko's greed is good is not the case.
Before we go, I do want to ask you this question as well. Has there been a piece of advice that you have been given earlier on in your life that has stuck with you, that was so important and you learned so much from it, that you can share with us and our listeners?
Sure. Surround yourself with really good, honest people. Second, I would say, is put a definition to success, because everyone defines success differently, right? Success for you may be, having 10,000 downloads. Congratulations on that, by the way.
Thank you.
To another person, it may be, having $1 trillion in the bank. I think for each person, in terms of their goals, is to be able to define what success is for them. For me, if I cover my bills and pay my mortgage, great, I'm successful. I love what I do. I'm passionate. I work with great people. Great, I'm successful. To somebody else, it could be very, very different. So I think defining what success means to you early on in your career is a really good thing.
Thank you so much, Ari. That was Ari Zoldan right here on Hebrew Hits. Now, if anybody wants to contact you and get in touch with you, how would they do that?
Twitter, I'm at Ari Zoldan. And I'm on Facebook and LinkedIn and all those other great social media platforms. So yeah, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to help anyone that needs advice or guidance, or just an ear. So
thank you so much for being here. That was the 41st episode of Hebrew Hits. Please go subscribe to Hebrew Hits Radio on YouTube. Hit that notification bell and like and share and comment. And please go follow Hebrew Hits on Instagram and Facebook at Hebrew_Hits. We are also available on all streaming apps. Please go give us a follow. We'll be back next week, same time, same place.
Thank you, Malya. You're awesome.